Hello, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to the REC podcast, brought to you by REC Comics and Collectibles. I'm your host today, Roman Chavez, and with me, as always,
Eric Icky Poo.
Oh, Icky Poo. Oh, I just like that. Eric, I wanted to talk to you about something that I've been seeing a lot lately.
What's that?
Some stuff with comic book speculation. Especially, we are in this post-Endgame world.
Right.
We have comic book movies that come out all the time, comic book television shows on every street corner, every streaming service has some version or another of comic books adapted for their format. And
we don't talk about the source material.
It's strange because like stocks, comic books go up and down depending on what the climate is.
For sure.
And I notice a lot of books gaining price, and many collectors do, just off of like announcements. When the Infinity War trailer dropped and we saw Peter Parker in kind of that Iron Spider costume.
Right.
That first appearance of the Iron Spider costume just jumps through the roof. You're gonna
like how substantial was that? What was the base amount, and then all of a sudden was it going
so
up
you could get that book
or something?
You could get that book for $20, $15 to $20, and then for about a week it was in that $75 to even $80, $90 range. Another example, most recently, it was Captain Marvel. When the Captain Marvel trailer dropped and you saw her kind of all lit up, we call that her binary form.
Right.
And that first appearance is in an Uncanny X-Men book. And that book went from dollar bin find to $100 book for a few days. And you have people just like jumping on the bandwagon. It's all bandwagon.
Oh, yeah.
So really what I want to talk to you about, as somebody who grew up in comics, doesn't collect, but grew up with it.
Oh, yeah.
What do you think should make a comic valuable? Like what would make a comic book valuable to you?
It's always going to be time to me.
Time
is, if a book comes out and if this character is, it maybe isn't very recognizable initially, but then in 20 years, all of a sudden he's like huge. Mm-hmm. He or she is huge. And it goes off the scarcity of the book too.
Okay.
Like say they didn't press 1,000 of these. They just pressed 500 of these, like a limited run to see how well the character would do. And maybe it didn't take off that well, but then 10 years down the line, it gets a resurgence, and then like, let's reboot this character, or let's bring this character back into canon, and then all of a sudden it's like, we did a first appearance of this guy 20 years ago.
Yeah.
And then, to me, that's what makes a book special and worth something.
Fair enough.
Not monetarily, but also, just as a collector.
See, that's interesting too. Like the difference in value from a collector and value from somebody who enjoys a story.
Sure.
So yeah, that's an interesting
point. Me, that's synonymous.
Yeah.
Because for me, it's sure. I mean, I'm not a huge comic book collector, but just being in that world, my father was a huge comic book collector, but he bought books because he liked them.
Yes.
It was never about, this is going to be worth something someday, It was like, I love the X-Men.
Yeah.
I love the Avengers. So he has a huge runs of these comic books, and he didn't know that this was going to be $1 billion franchise,
Yeah.
So, I mean, but nowadays it's people get on their phones and their computers, and it's like they study algorithms almost. It's almost like a science.
Yeah.
To buying books, and that's become paramount to the actual story or actually reading the book. I bet you 50% of these people didn't even crack the book. They haven't even read the story.
Oh, yeah. And I'm guilty of that too. I love comic books. I've got hundreds that I need to someday catch up on.
Oh, sure, absolutely. But at the same time, this is your business as well.
Yeah, that's true.
So this is also a business for you, but you didn't start out like that.
No.
You started out just reading books and loving the stories, man. That's what got you into collecting in the first place. It wasn't like, I want to make a bunch of money off this.
Yeah.
This was like, I love these.
Yeah.
I love the story.
They say try to find something that you love and try to find a way to get paid for it.
Sure.
I'm trying to turn my life into that when it comes to comic books. But that I feel like that does rub a lot of collectors the wrong way.
It does.
I don't have a problem with the fad collectors. I don't.
Sure.
The fad collectors, I think they really do, pump
they put spikes in the they make it spike for a little while.
Yeah, they spike
sure.
the comic book economy. It makes things kind of interesting. It gives you that rush of the hunt.
There you go.
When you're like, I've got this book that is heating up, I've got it. I've got to go find it.
Yeah.
And then you're in that mindset. Do I sell or do I hold on to it?
Right.
And so much of my life, I've just held on to books, and I've held on to them. I've got so many books, and you know what? I'm jumping on the bandwagon. I'm selling. I'm getting stuff out there, stuff that I enjoy, but somebody else wants it and they're willing to pay for it. I'm down for that.
Absolutely, for sure.
With the release of Endgame,
mm-hmm.
And spoilers if you haven't watched it, go ahead and pause this. But Avengers Volume 4, Issue 12 is a book that's heating up right now, and only because it has Tony Stark as Iron Man with the Infinity Gauntlet on the cover.
Right.
Has nothing to do with Endgame. No. Nothing in it in that issue.
Well, this book came out in 2011.
Roughly, yeah, 2011.
So this predates the movie by almost 10 years. Yeah. So they didn't know.
No. And this book went from $1 bin, $2 bin find to, right now it's kind of hovering at about $40.
Wow.
But the first couple days after Endgame came out, people are spending $80, $100 on this book.
Just because it had a sort of visual tie-in to the movie.
Yeah, just barely a visual tie-in in the loosest sense of the word. Yeah. It's a very good
almost.
Yes.
What was the story about? Just real quick. Was it even Tony collecting the gems, or
he does collect the gems? Okay. It does actually kind of follow our Illuminati people.
Oh, okay.
And there's this guy, they call him the Hood, and he has this magical cloak that actually was like a part demon. And so he was able to become like the new kingpin of New York because he had like some power. Well, the demon gets banished, I think, or dies, and so he's trying to collect power again. Right. So he's looking for the stones. And at this point, our Illuminati people have the stones, and he's finding them individually from our Illuminati in the Marvel Universe. So it was a stone collecting thing, and Tony does end up wielding the gauntlet, but it has nothing to do with Avengers Endgame,
right?
And it is solely skyrocketed because he's wearing the gauntlet on the cover.
Right.
John Romita Jr. did the art.
Which is great.
It
you
looks
just showed me the book right before we went on.
Yeah.
The art is great.
Yeah,
it's amazing.
It's it's a cool cover. I own probably 6 copies of it because I'm such an Infinity Gauntlet fan.
Of course.
Back in the day.
Right.
And
anytime you like Romita Jr. too.
I like his covers more than I like his I like his covers more than I like his action. Yeah. His run on X-Men in the 90s I really enjoyed. People really like his Spider-Man. I'm less inclined. I like his Kingpin.
There you go.
But it's so strange. Now, there are so many things. Even another recent book was Rebirth Flash #1 and Flash Rebirth #1. 2 different books,
right?
Part of the same storyline. Has this new Flash villain, Godspeed, when they just announced that Godspeed's going to be in the Flash TV show.
Oh, okay.
So that book that you were spending $10 on because it did introduce a new character,
sure.
Now you're spending $20, $25 on, in some cases. But they're going to come down. Like almost every one of these books come down.
Well, that's gravity, baby.
It is. It is. And, for me, I've kind of broken it down into several categories. Like, what should make a comic book worth money if we're talking about that?
Sure.
And a lot of it, you kind of touched on some of these. You were saying time. I agree with you there. Age. These books that are older.
Right.
There are less of them out there. As time goes by, comics go missing. Comics get destroyed. People move, and they leave a box someplace.
Right.
And the rarity of a book really starts to come to fruition.
Well, you got to also remember back in the 40s and 50s, people were, swatting flies with comic books.
Oh yeah,
it was trash. Essentially, it was just like you read it and you tossed it in the garbage, basically.
Yeah.
That's why those books are so scarce.
Oh yeah.
That's why they're worth money, is because they weren't kept pristine and kept as a collection. And, you jump 20, 30 years later, and now there's a comic book boom. Yeah. Now they're over producing comic books. But back to your point, what were you saying?
My dad told me when he was a kid in the 70s that his dad, who was in the, my grandfather was in the Army, and he would just pull comic books out of the trash can. The GIs would read them, and then they would throw them away, and my grandfather would pick the comics out of the trash can and take them home. And that's how my dad got a lot of his comics when he was younger.
Anything good?
From what he says, yes. But when he went off to boot camp, my grandmother gave his comics and baseball cards to the neighborhood kids.
Oh no!
And like
this when he went out to the Corps.
Oh, okay.
When he went out to boot camp. Yeah.
And like I was going through a magazine one time, and I'm showing some old master of kung fu stuff, Iron Fist stuff. And it's like, oh, I think I had that, and it's like first appearances of these people. And you're like, geez.
First appearance of Sabretooth.
Yeah, just like wacky stuff, and it's like, oh gosh, it could have been mine, but that's cool.
Yeah.
I'm over it.
Oh man,
I'm over it. Some other things, first appearances of people,
right? But that also plays into the time because I mean,
that's true.
There's going to be how many first appearances of character like Century? Let's go to a kind of a recent one.
Mm-hmm.
The Century character, which was from Marvel,
Mm-hmm.
and they kind of marketed him as a lost Stanley creation, right? And I think they thought this was going to be a big hit. It was a big miss, right?
It was a pretty big miss for the most part, just because when you make a character, the Sentry, basically they said he has the power of 1 million exploding suns.
Superman for Marvel.
Basically Superman for Marvel, but then they kind of gave him a...
he's like bipolar or something.
Yeah, like a mental disorder where he is also his own worst enemy.
The Void.
Yeah. And it was a book, and even his first appearance in comics does, go for $25,
sure.
But it's one of those things that not all first appearances are going to matter.
Sure.
Nobody cares about the Polka Dot Man in DC Comics, except they just cast him in a movie, so I bet you his first appearance goes up in price.
Well, that's, yeah. I mean, so how do you think about this? Like, I think you showed me a book where there was like a first appearance of Shatterstar, technically, but it's not. They don't call him Shatterstar. Like he's a background character, right? What do they call that?
They called it a cameo that predates first appearance.
Okay, now does that spike a book up?
It depends. We have all right. The first appearance of Wolverine,
right. Hulk 180.
Is actually, is a 180.
Not 181.
And that's his cameo that predates his first appearance. He shows up in a panel on the last page, but then his first full appearance is in 181. And the price difference in those books is hundreds of dollars.
Yeah, massive.
And it's like, no, he shows up on this last page. Like, why is this not his first appearance?
Yeah.
Doesn't matter. Like, people want Hulk 180.
Sure.
But
181 is the...
181 is the gem. That is the one, the classic Wolverine on the cover fighting the Hulk.
And the Wendigo.
Exactly. So it's like, it's like, what do you do? We talked about it briefly in the Major X episode.
Right.
That his first appearance shows up on another book.
Sure.
And it's just like, what do we do as collectors? What do we do? Deaths are also a big deal in comics.
Right.
A lot of times. Now, not always. I mean, as we all know from...
Death of Superman.
Superman, that's right. Death of Superman, they were touting that as supposed to be the end-all, be-all of Superman comics. And...
Well, you had non-collectors buying books, so they pressed, millions of these things?
Hundreds of thousands.
And they're not worth anything. Right?
Yeah.
Essentially not worth anything. I mean...
Yeah, they're not. They're barely worth the paper they were put on.
Our friend's mom bought one. I remember her telling me. She's the furthest thing from a comic book collector. And it was AJ's mom. So she remember her telling me about that. And I think she was telling you, like, oh yeah, I have this comic book. It's probably worth a lot. It's the Death of Superman. You're like, nah.
No, you've got toilet paper, Superman toilet paper right there. Now, which brings us to another point. Now, there are variations of that book.
Oh, okay.
Different colors, different.
Are these imperfections, or are they actually variants?
They're meant to be variations.
Oh,
yes.
Okay.
And so variants create there's a market for that.
Sure.
To where you'll have one book, and we'll just say it's the Death of Superman for this conversation, and then maybe there's another cover of that book where it's the same story on the inside, but the cover was done by a different artist,
right,
or just a different picture from the same artist.
Okay.
And we get that a lot, and a lot of collectors these days dislike that. I'm not the person who dislikes. I love variant covers.
Oh yeah, you do.
I just like the art.
That's right.
If it's worth money, cool. If it's not, that's fine too.
You're getting two cool covers out of it, because isn't that the point of these? Is to appreciate the art.
Art. The art
of
the story. Yes.
Right. But yeah, if you're gonna give me a different cover drawn by a different artist who you respect and love, then why not?
Yeah, it's always
I want
nice
to see their interpretation on this,
Exactly. That's how I feel. Now, it does kind of water down the market, but at the same time, if you're the kind of guy who doesn't like variant covers, then what do you care about the market?
Yeah,
you should just be into the plot of the story.
Exactly.
But there are, you brought up errors. Yeah, there are pressing errors where just like a coin, where the panels aren't pressed properly on there. The colors are done incorrectly. There was a All-Star Batman and Robin book a few years back that they would have Batman cuss in it, but they would like redact the cuss words.
Right.
But then like
some of them
weren't fully redacted, and I mean it just makes people go nuts. And it goes nuts for a little while, and then it comes back down to earth.
When okay, kind of on the same lines, you were showing me these sort of not banned covers, but inappropriate recalled covers.
Yeah,
there is a Alf one that is absolutely hilarious. I wish I knew the issue number so you folks could go Google it.
Yeah.
Let's just say Alf is in a precarious position with a walrus or a seal.
Yeah.
And it's hilarious.
Looks like he's engaging in a forced sexual act with a seal. And
then people just only collect these kinds of books.
That's all they want. All they want is recalled books.
So
I'm very into that, how there's like layers to this. You're a big record collector.
Yes, I am.
You like vinyl albums.
I do.
And I'm sure that pressed errors in records drive up the cost.
It does. That is what you're essentially looking for as a record collector.
Really?
Is the errors. Not necessarily the audio errors, but the art errors. Like, you get the
sleeve
or the artwork is completely different or recalled. Quick example, I have the first Led Zeppelin record was printed, the actual name Led Zeppelin was printed in orange. And then they had 1,000 go out with a turquoise color, which I own.
Okay.
And
so you have both of them?
I do have both of them. So that one is worth $5,000.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, because there wasn't that many. And the ones that probably did get out, people didn't take care of it.
Yeah.
So they probably trashed, but I do have one that's in pretty decent condition.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's sort of like coin collecting. You look for errors, like, you get the kissing Lincolns, like in The Simpsons.
Yeah.
But I mean, does that pertain to comic books too? Is there like overlapping things where they're like, oh, the cover's reversed, it's mirrored, and so it's worth
I haven't seen that, but one thing that I would love to get, but I want to find it in the wild and not pay for it, is there'll be an error where there's two covers. So you'll have the existing cover and you open it up and there'll be a second cover.
Oh.
And I've seen them on eBay and I've seen people share them. Really cool. I've never, as far as I know, I don't have any. Like I said, there are hundreds of books that I need to read, but especially if it's an older book and if it's a book of merit, like a first appearance of Deadpool,
sure,
or something like that, that is so much rarer, and it may only pertain to the collector who's into errors, but somebody who's into it will pay good money for it.
You're going to get the error collector and you're going to get like the Deadpool collector.
Yeah, exactly.
Like, oh my God.
Exactly. And as I said earlier, I love that aspect of collecting, where it's like there are guys who only collect Wolverine. There's this dude on Instagram. This guy, he owns no less than 15 copies of Incredible Hulk 181.
Dang.
All of them are graded. They range from a 4 all the way up to like a 9.6. This guy's got tens of thousands of dollars in first appearance of Wolverines.
Yeah.
And people ask him, like, what are you doing? He's like, well, this is all I collect. I only collect
I just get Wolverine
stuff. And I only collect the best Wolverine stuff. So, and this guy, his collection is something to behold.
Wow.
He's got so many copies of 181, several at like 9.4.
Does Wolverine's Frank Miller run, that mini-series, does that go for decent money?
It does, yeah. You'll often find that issue 1 can
that's him on the cover going like that.
Yeah, and you'll see that go consistently for about $80.
Really?
Yeah, and like a whole run, 150 to 200, depending on the condition.
Right. Wow.
What we would call raw.
Raw.
Yeah, not graded. Encapsulated.
Maybe I like it raw.
Yeah. There you go. Do they do that with records? Do they do they have like an encapsulation?
Yeah, sealed. You get people who want completely sealed records. They do go for more, which to me negates the purpose of buying a record. But yeah, the sealed records go for more. I had at one point, 'cause my dad collected records too. It was more into comics.
Yeah.
It was the 70s. People bought records.
Yeah.
So at one point I had a full set of sealed Kiss albums with it was their pictures. Because every member of Kiss released their own record.
Yeah.
And I had all 4 of those sealed at one time. I have since sold these off to buy other stuff that I liked because I'm not a Kiss person.
Yeah.
And Kiss fans are ravenous. And then I remember bringing it.
Kiss Army.
Yeah, there you go, baby. And then those actually had the membership for the Kiss Army in there.
Oh, very cool.
Because it said it on the sticker. And I remember bringing that into the record store. And the guy that was buying it off me, he was like, I expect these to go out. I expect these to sell in like 3 days. And he had one guy come in, just browsing, saw all 4 of them, bought them on the spot.
Wow.
Within a day.
Wow.
So, because they were sealed. He's like, I have these, but not sealed. So, yeah, there's definitely a market for just buying sealed records.
Yeah. I'm a big fan of comics and action figures. And I would like to get into buying old vintage video games and having sealed ones because there's a company that grades sealed video games as well. And yeah, same thing. They go for a higher price and all of that. And it's like, I'm not going to play this game. I like the box art.
Okay. Is that what it comes down to? Yes. Because, I guess appreciating the album art makes sense, but you buy a record to listen to it. And you buy a comic book to read it.
I know. I love it. I've read it, and if I want to read it again, I can buy a trade paperback.
Sure. And I can buy the CD if I want to listen to this record.
I love graded books.
Right.
But we'll talk about that
we'll
more
get
on
into that some
another
other
show.
time. Yeah, definitely.
There have been some more recent, just kind of like spikes. Now, there are some things that do go up in price and then kind of stay there.
Like what? Like Superman, Action Comics.
Action Comics #1, baby, that thing is gold.
It's like $1 million, right?
$3 million.
$3 million.
Yeah, I think that's the high. It's like 3 something was the high sale for that. Detective Comics 27, first appearance of Batman. I was at like 2.7 million, and then that was the highest selling book of all time. And then that Action Comics went for like 3 something. It's just from 1938,
right?
In 1938 and 39, and there's just never going to be any more.
Right.
There's just never going to be any more. I would love to, buy a collection and have one sandwiched between it. It would be hard for me to sell it.
Oh yeah.
I probably would.
You'd have to.
Because that would
fund a lot of stuff.
It would change my life, but I would never ever be able to get another one.
Never.
Nope. Same thing, Amazing Fantasy 15, first appearance of Spider-Man. That one's, it's not in the $1 million status, but it's high up there.
It's got a chunk of
600,
change.
700,000.
Would that be Marvel's most expensive book? Or Fantastic Four?
Fantastic Four #1 and Incredible Hulk #1.
What about
those ones? Captain America Comics #1 from the 40s. Yeah, that's near $1 million.
Okay.
In the highest condition.
Right, where he's punching Hitler.
Yeah, good old Hitler punch. You just don't get that anymore.
I did not think you were gonna say punch after that.
Yeah.
Where he was going with this.
Yeah. I went the right way place with it. All right. But most recently, you have Captain Marvel, and in the movie Logan, you had Logan's daughter, for lack of a better word, X-23.
Yeah.
Her first appearance is in this book, NYX #3. We just call it NYX 3.
NYX, yeah.
And that book, as soon as it was announced that she was going to be in the movie, that book skyrocketed. I bought 6 copies of it when it came out because this is going to be something.
You knew.
Well, I knew, but let's be real. It took 10 years for that book to become.
Right, but you instinctually knew.
I hoped.
You hoped. Okay, it wasn't a no, it was a hope.
Yeah.
Have you ever been wrong on something?
I've been wrong.
This character is going to blow up.
I've been wrong a bunch of times, more times than I can count. But when I've been right in the good way.
You should tell the funny Walking Dead story you told me a couple nights ago, where you could have got the whole the first issue from that raw.
Oh yeah.
And you're like, nah, I'm not gonna read that.
Yeah.
You should go ahead, because it's kind of an entertaining story.
I was buying my comics, and I was in a spot where I was cutting back.
Yeah.
And my comic book shop guy, he's like, hey, I know you like zombies. I put in, and at this point I was buying 2 of every book, and he put in 2 copies of #1. In my
Walking Dead #1.
Yeah, that book raw goes for at least $1,200.
Oh.
And I was like, I thumbed through it. I was like, this is cool. I was like, just put me down for the trade. I want to read it, but I don't buy black and white books. And at this point, I wasn't buying anything non-superhero. and I regret it every day. I mean, it's so hard to find. There's probably around 10,000 copies in existence. And there's...
When did you start buying these books? Like,
I start buying them. My collection starts at issue 18 or 19. Oof. So, like, I read the first trade, I was like, oh, this is amazing. And then the books, like, started to jump up in price. And I remember I was at Comic-Con one year at San Diego, and they wanted $100 for number one. And I was like, ooh, too much. That's going to come back down. So, yeah, I definitely whiff. I whiff. You know, because you get into those situations where you buy a bunch of something and you're hoping, just hoping against hope. And then you're just like, Jesus, why did I buy all of these Squirrel Girl comics? Why do I need the first appearance of Chip? It doesn't make any sense. But, you hope. You hope. But Nick's 3 was a good one for me. And then Edge of the Spider-Verse number 2. Oh, yeah. That's the first appearance of Spider-Gwen.
Yep.
And it is a hot book, man. It's a hot book.
Yeah, you're showing me, man. I'm like, wow. I actually got to hold it.
Yeah, raw copy goes for $200, and I think I still have 3. I have one graded at a 9.8, which is about a $500 book. So, it's nice to be right.
Yeah.
It's nice to be right. Do you think something that's weird about value is very rarely is a book just about the story?
Oh, for sure.
And in terms of its value, it's very rare. It almost always has to do with art. And then, like, the character. But, like, a really good story on a book, it's very rare that's what makes the price go up.
Right. I'm at a loss. Maybe Giant Size X-Men?
Yeah, but again, that's tons of first appearances. That's
true.
That's like the book of the, I would assume, I think that's the Bronze Age. So that's like the book of the Bronze Age. Yeah. That and Hulk 181, where it's like, you have these first appearances of so many people in Giant Size X-Men. Yeah. So many people that are still relevant today.
Oh, yeah.
It's Wolverine's first appearance as an X-Man.
Yeah.
Colossus.
Nightcrawler.
Sunfire.
Banshee.
Banshee's actually first appearance is in an earlier X-Men.
Really?
Yeah, he was a villain in the in an early run of the X-Men.
What?
Yeah. You'd recognize the cover. Blown. You'd recognize the cover. I'm at a loss for the number, but it's like this. It's like on the cover it says like "Where cries the Banshee" or "Who shrieks the Banshee," and he looks all green. And he's got this. I don't know. I'll show you an image
for sure.
But you'll be like, "Oh, that's Banshee." Yeah, it was an old X-Men book.
Was he wearing like a 4-leaf clover or something like that?
No, but it was just like. You wouldn't know that was Cassidy, you know?
Okay, yeah.
You would know that it was Sean Cassidy.
Is there a book you have in mind that the story did drive up the price? Because I am at a loss, dude. I got nothing on that, bro.
I'd argue that the Dark Knight story is what... Because, like, the art's garbage in the Dark Knight, in my opinion.
I agree.
I am the guy who does not... put Frank Miller's Dark Knight Returns.
If you thumb back to our Batman episode, please do.
Yeah, our 80th anniversary book episode.
Roman and Casey have some choice words for that book.
Story's interesting.
Story's very interesting.
So for me, that's a book that is worth money. Some money that is
story driven.
For me, it's story driven and definitely not art driven. But yeah, I think
Frank, I love you, but yeah, your art sucks, dude. Sorry,
just that Dark Knight art. There's a lot of his art.
Well,
really
in Sin City it works good. Some of his Daredevil works pretty well as. But yeah, for the most part, sorry, dude.
It's just not for me. It's just not for me. Too blocky, too...
When he doesn't want to draw blocky, he's not a bad artist.
No, yeah. Oh, yeah, of course not.
I feel like he just did some drugs and was like, oh, man, this looks great.
Yeah. Nobody's drawing like this.
There's a reason.
Yeah. There's a few, but nothing that jumps out to me that I'm like, oh, this book is awesome because
of the story. And I think that's... Maybe, let's go on the Batman thing, maybe Hush? Or is that first appearance, too, of, like...
It's first appearance of Hush, Tommy Elliott and Hush are in there, and, but that story is just great, but the big book in there that's worth the money is the Jim Lee's cover to Batman and Superman fighting, issue 612. One of my top 5 favorite covers of all time.
It's up there, man.
I own 15 copies of it.
Yeah, you do.
Yeah, I'm just like, I need it. Anytime I can buy it for the right price,
if
I can buy it for $15, I'll always buy it. I'll buy it right now if you had one. I'll give you $15. But they go anywhere from $25 to $30. Sometimes people get hard up and they'll sell a whole run, and then the whole run is, less than buying that cover. So, it is fascinating. It is fascinating what kind of drives these prices, what makes things sought after, and just kind of what kills them. Because what always kills those TV shows, like this Godspeed thing in Flash.
Yeah.
What's going to kill the value of that book is probably Godspeed's going to be really lame.
Right.
It's going to be really lame in the Flash, and nobody is going to care.
But this sucks.
Yeah.
And it's going to crash.
Yeah. When Infinity War, when we knew we were going towards Infinity War, we knew Thanos was coming for sure. Obviously, we had seen little appearances of him in other movies, like Guardians and after the first Avengers. His first appearance is a more modern Grail. Like, it should have more heat to it, but its value was never bigger or higher than when Infinity War came out. It's Iron Man 55.
That's right.
His first appearance with the Blood Brothers in there and everything, and. But then he shows up basically on the last page, if I remember correctly.
Oh, is that what it was too?
Yeah, and it's not even a cameo that predates. It's just like, that's just what they...
That's Thanos.
Yeah, that's Thanos. Maybe because he gets a full page and not a little panel like Venom. Venom does a little small cameo in $2.99, and then his first appearance is credited in 300 of Amazing Spider-Man.
Wow.
Same thing with Cable. Cable shows up in New Mutants 83 on the last panel, but his first appearance is 84.
That's right.
Yeah, it's an interesting thing. There are people online, people I follow, and if you listen, you know who you are, and they let themselves get a little bent out of shape about what other people are doing, how other people are collecting. Like, they don't seem to understand that, the people who are willing to jump on those fly-by-night books, like, they help this industry.
Yeah, they do.
And I bet you a lot of them, since they keep doing it, just enjoy that adrenaline, that thrill. Oh, okay, cool, I got one.
Got it.
They don't want it when it was $1.
No.
They want it when it was hot.
Yeah. You could even argue that they're keeping this afloat sometimes.
It is.
They're in the quieter times. They could be keeping this industry kind of floating right now.
When people who sell comics, man, you're happy when you're like, oh my gosh, I have all of these first appearances of again, the Polka Dot Man. Sure. And it's like, okay, cool, now I can flip these for something, useful.
Right.
And then I can put that money back into the hobby. At least that's what, in my opinion,
that's what I did with those Kiss records.
There you go.
Same thing, man.
There you go. Yeah, sell. I love to sell comics to buy comics.
Yeah, that's how I saw it, man. Because, I don't like Kiss, but I'm like, you know what? Someone's going to get some enjoyment out of this. Someone wants this, man. So sell it to them, and I get something I want.
Yeah.
So, I don't see a problem with that, man. I mean, to your point, there's a part of me as a record collector that's like, wow, it's booming right now. The record, buying industry is just booming. I remember going to a record store 5 years ago, and it'd be me and two other people. There's some days when it's shoulder to shoulder, man.
Yeah.
And it's just, you're just looking around at these out of work baristas in their scarves and their skull caps in 90-degree weather, and like, dude, get out of here.
See,
and I go, you don't need to be buying this Fleet Foxes record on vinyl, man. Like, come on,
and I think that's the issue there.
And it's a bad attitude for me to have.
Are the people, it's like this fear of, this guy who doesn't appreciate it like I appreciate it.
And that's subjective. I get it.
And I've been there too. I'm not,
sure.
I'm not holding it against anybody. Yeah. But I think that however people want to collect is how they should collect.
Right.
And somebody that I follow on Instagram, he always preaches, buy what you like.
Yeah.
Just buy what you like.
Sure.
But if I'm the kind of guy who wants to buy that binary Captain Marvel for $100, it should not put any salt in your game on what's going on.
Right. For sure.
Take advantage of the guys who are willing to pay exorbitant amounts for something that is going to drop back down. Stack your own money, man. Sure. Stack your paper. Enjoy what you're doing. Enjoy the hustle. Sure. Yeah. Enjoy the hustle.
And that's what it all comes down to as collecting. It's a hustle.
Yeah.
It's a stocks game too, like you said earlier, and it's you're hustling, man. Yeah. You're hustling and flowing.
I just wanted to. I've been seeing a lot lately about this. I thought it was something interesting that we could talk about, and. If you like what we're doing, please go ahead and hit that subscribe button.
Get in on the conversation, folks.
Yeah, give us some likes. Are there some books you're like, oh man, this one went up and stayed up and I was so happy because I bought all of these?
Is there something you were surprised you bought where you're like, oh, this is just another book, and you go back and read it and you're like, oh, this had the first appearance of Gideon from X-Force. I don't know. I'm just like...
Eric, what'd you learn today?
I learned that there's a lot of angry comic book collectors out there.
There is, man. There is. It is
nerd rage, baby.
Nerd rage. Yeah, I mean, it's not just for video game people anymore.
No.
I learned that comics and records share a lot of qualities in terms of collectability.
They do.
And really, I guess just anything that you collect. Sure. Everybody wants, even in sports cards, you can send those off to people.
Oh, for sure.
Those things.
That was like the first. That predates anything you were doing, dude.
Oh, definitely. So that's been our show today. Yeah. Thanks for tuning in. Again, if you like what we're doing, hit the subscribe button, hit that like button, and leave us a review on the podcast apps if you can.
Please do.
It helps us move up the charts. It helps people get exposure. You can check out our Instagram page at REC Comics. We post things for sale. We post ridiculous things. We post the episodes. We'd like to get a dialogue with you going. We're going to start selling stuff there more. As soon as we get some more followers, some more subscribers, we're going to start getting some stuff sold there. For the REC podcast, I have been your host, Roman Chavez.
Erik Icarus,
as always, and thanks for tuning in.